Chapter 13. The Chase. Everyone, except Boy 412, who was still asleep, stared into the darkness. As they did so, the searchlight swept across the distant horizon again, lighting up the broad expanse of river and the low-lying banks on either side. There was no doubt in anyone's mind what it was. "It's the hunter, isn't it, Dad?" whispered Jenna. Silas knew Jenna was right, but he said, "Well, it could be anything, Poppet. Just a boat out fishing. Or something," he added lamely. "Of course it's the hunter. In a fast-paced pursuit bullet boat, if I'm not mistaken," snapped Marcia, who had suddenly stopped feeling sick. Marcia didn't realize it, but she no longer felt sick because Muriel had stopped bouncing through the water. In fact, Muriel had stopped doing anything at all, except slowly drifting nowhere in particular. Marcia looked accusingly at Nico. "Get a move on, Nico. What have you slowed down for?" "There's nothing I can do. The wind's dropped," muttered Nico, worried. He had just turned Muriel toward the Merriam marshes, only to find that the wind had died. Muriel had lost all speed, and her sails were hanging limply. "Well, we can't just sit here," Marcia anxiously watching the searchlight coming rapidly closer. "That bullet boat's going to be here in a few minutes." "Can't you rustle up some wind for us?" Silas asked Marcia, agitated. "I thought you did element control on the advanced course, or make us invisible. Come on, Marcia, do something." "I can't just rustle up some wind, as you put it. There's nowhere near enough time, and you know invisibility is a personal spell. I can't do it for anyone else." The searchlight swept across the water again, bigger, brighter, nearer, and coming toward them, fast. "We'll have to use the paddles," said Nico, who, as skipper, had decided to take charge. "We can paddle over to the marsh and hide there. Come on, quick!" Marcia, Silas, and Jenna grabbed a paddle each. Boy 412 woke up with a start as Jenna thumped his head down on the deck in her rush to pick up a paddle. He looked around him unhappily. Why was he still in the boat with all the wizards? What did they want from him? Jenna thrust the remaining paddle into his hand. "Paddle," she told him, "as fast as you can." Jenna's tone of voice reminded Boy 412 of his drill teacher. He put his paddle into the water and paddled as fast as he could. Slowly, far too slowly, Muriel crept toward the safety of the Merriam marshes, while the bullet boat's searchlight swung backward and forward across the water, mercilessly seeking out its prey. Jenna stole a look behind her, and to her horror, saw the black shape of the bullet boat. It was like a long, repulsive beetle, its 5 pairs of thin black legs silently slicing through the water to and fro, as the highly trained oarsmen pushed themselves in the boat to the limits, gaining fast on Muriel's frantically paddling occupants. Sitting in the prow was the unmistakable shape of the hunter, tense and ready to pounce. Jenna caught the hunter's cold, calculating stare, and suddenly felt brave enough to talk to Marcia. "Marcia," said Jenna, "we're not going to reach the marshes in time. You must do something, now." Although Marcia looked surprised at being spoken to so directly, she approved. Spoken like a true princess, she thought. "Very well," agreed Marcia. "I could try a fog. I can do that in 53 seconds, if it's cold and damp enough." Muriel's crew was sure that there was no problem with the cold and damp bit. They just hoped they had 53 seconds left. "Everyone stop paddling," instructed Marcia. "Keep still and quiet. Very quiet." Muriel's crew did as they were told, and in the silence that fell, they heard a new sound in the distance, the rhythmic splash of the bullet boat's oars. Marcia gingerly stood up, wishing that the floor wouldn't move around so much. Then she leaned against the mast to steady herself, took a deep breath, and threw her arms wide, her cloak flying out like a pair of purple wings. "Merkin wake," the extraordinary wizard whispered as loud as she dared. "Merkin wake, and refuge make." It was a beautiful spell. Jenna watched as thick white clouds gathered themselves together in the bright moonlit sky, quickly obscuring the moon and bringing down a deep chill into the night air. In the darkness all became deathly still as the first delicate tendrils of mist started to rise from the black water as far as the eye could see. Faster and faster the tendrils grew, gathering together and growing into thick swaths of fog, as the mist from the marshes rolled over the water to join them. In the very center, in the eye of the fog, sat Muriel, becalmed and patiently waiting as the mist tumbled, swirled, and thickened around her. Soon Muriel was blanketed by a deep, white thickness that struck a damp chill into Jenna's bones. Next to her, she felt Boy 412 start shivering badly. He was still chilled from his time under the snow. 53 seconds precisely, Marcia's voice muttered out from the fog. Not bad. Shh, shushed Silas. Thick white silence fell in the little boat. Jenna slowly lifted her hand and placed it in front of her wide open eyes. She could see nothing but whiteness, but she could hear everything. She could hear the synchronized splash of 10 knife-sharp oars being dipped into the water and out again. In and out, in and out. She could hear the swishing whisper of the bullet boat's prow slicing through the river. And now the bullet boat was so close that she could even hear the labored breathing of the oarsmen. Stop! The hunter's voice boomed through the fog. The splash of the oars ceased and the bullet boat drifted to a halt. Inside the fog, Muriel's occupants held their breath, convinced that the bullet boat was very close indeed, maybe close enough for them to reach out and touch, or close enough even for the hunter to leap onto Muriel's crowded deck. Jenna felt her heart beating fast and loud, but she made herself breathe slowly, silently, and stay completely still. She knew that although they could not be seen, they could still be heard. Nico and Marcia were doing the same. Silas was too, with the added interest of having one hand clasped around Maxie's long, damp muzzle to stop him from howling, and the other hand slowly and calmly stroking the agitated wolfhound, who had become quite spooked by the fog. Jenna could feel Boy 412's constant shivering. She slowly reached out her arm and pulled him close to her to try and warm him up. Boy 412 seemed tense. Jenna could tell he was listening hard to the hunter's voice. "We have them," the hunter was saying. "This is a hexed fog if I ever saw one. And what do you always find in the middle of the hexed fogs? One hexing wizard and her accomplices." His low, self-satisfied chuckle drifted through the fog and made Jenna shiver. "Give yourselves up." The hunter's disembodied voice enveloped Muriel. The princess has nothing to fear from us. Neither do the rest of you. We are only concerned for your own safety and wish to escort you back to the castle before you have an unfortunate accident. Jenna hated how the hunter's oily voice. She hated the way they could not escape it, the way they had to just sit there and listen to his silky, smooth lies. She wanted to shout at him, to tell him that she was in charge here, that she would not listen to his threats, but that soon he would be sorry. And then she felt Boy 412 take a deep breath, and she knew exactly what he was going to do. Yell. Jenna clapped her hand tightly around Boy 412's mouth. He struggled with her and tried to push her away, but she grabbed his arm with her other hand and held them tightly against his sides. Jenna was strong for her size and very quick. Boy 412 was no match for her, thin and weak as he was. Boy 412 was furious. His last chance to redeem himself had been thwarted. He could have returned to the young army as a hero, having bravely foiled the wizard's attempt to escape. Instead, he had the princess's grubby little hand shoved over his mouth, which was making him feel sick. And she was stronger than him. That wasn't right. He was a boy, and she was just a stupid girl. In his anger, Boy 412 kicked out and hit the deck with a loud thump. At once, Nico was on him, pinning his legs down and holding him so tight that he was completely unable to move or make another sound. But the damage was done. The hunter was loading his pistol with a silver bullet. Boy 412's angry kick had been all the hunter needed to pinpoint exactly where they were. He smiled to himself as he turned the pistol on its tripod to face into the fog. He was indeed pointing it straight at Jenna. Marcia heard the metallic clicks of the silver bullet being loaded, a sound she had heard once before and never forgotten. She thought fast. She could do a begrid and preserve, but she understood the hunter well enough to know that he would merely watch and wait until the spell faded. The only solution, thought Marcia, was a projection. She just hoped that she had enough energy to maintain it. Marcia closed her eyes and projected. She projected an image of Muriel and all its occupants sailing out of the fog at full speed. Like all projections, it was a mirror image, but she hoped that in the darkness, with the Muriel already sailing away fast, the hunter would not notice. "Sir!" came the shout of an oarsman. "They're trying to outrun us, sir!" The sounds of the pistol being primed ceased. The hunter swore. Follow them, you idiots! He screamed at the oarsmen. Slowly the bullet boat pulled away from the fog. Faster! Yelled the hunter angrily, unable to bear the sight of his prey escaping for the third time that night. Inside the fog, Jenna and Nico grinned. Score 1 up for them.